There is just so much space going to waste in our homes, and I've noticed that it's mostly because of unsuspecting everyday products that manage to sneak their way in while quietly suffocating the hard-earned space and sanity that we spend so much of our time trying to pay for. So in this video, I'm going to expose 10 of the worst space-wasting products in our homes and what to replace them with. But first, this video is sponsored by ASUS and their groundbreaking Zenbook A14, which is an ultra-lightweight Copilot Plus PC weighing less than 1 kilo. Its Snapdragon X series processor enables it to provide up to a whopping 32 hours of battery life while unleashing the full benefits of Microsoft's AI-powered Copilot features. And this lightweight performance is largely thanks to its ceruleum construction, which is a breakthrough material from ASUS that combines the resilience of ceramic with the malleability of metal, that results in a durable yet lightweight material that is fully recyclable and non-hazardous to produce, which creates a fingerprint and scratch-resistant finish paired with a premium minimalist aesthetic. And with its array of ports, the easy lift hinge, an OLED display, and an enlarged touchpad with smart gestures, this makes it perhaps the ultimate companion for effortless on-the-go productivity. So to learn more, check out the ASUS Zenbook A14 using the link in the video description below. Chances are there's that one cupboard in your home that feels like an absolute dumpster pile of Tupperware, takeout containers, and lids that's impossible to keep organized, so that every time you go in there, it feels like you're being confronted with level 99 of Tetris. However, you may be surprised at just how much space you can end up magically creating simply by doing a hard reset. Now, I know what you're all thinking right now.
All of these containers work perfectly fine, so why do I need to get rid of them?
But trust me, this doesn't matter, because containers cost pennies. Do you know what doesn't cost pennies? Renting a single square foot of floor space in Vancouver. Yes, I know. It hurts. Now, I had never made this calculation for my home too before making this video, and when you consider that the average kitchen cabinet is somewhere between 2 and 4 square feet, you can start to appreciate how expensive this storage space really is. And so what I've found to be the fix here specifically is glass containers. Now, the key here is that you buy ones that match and that are relatively easy to replace, perhaps from a nearby store that just so happens to sell good meatballs. But most importantly, when they're all the same size, it's this that allows them to stack, which means that they can take up the smallest possible footprint in your valuable cupboard space. And the reason that I say glass is best for space saving and not metal or plastic is that it can also go in the microwave without completely exploding and go in the oven without melting. And on top of that, glass is also great for serving and eating out of too. So we even use ours as bowls for things like cereal, ramen, and soups, which also cuts down on the amount of tableware that we have to allocate to our cupboards. But because glass isn't really the best for transporting food out of the house, if you happen to purchase from a brand that has identical plastic or metal versions of these containers, you can keep a couple of these in the house whilst tapping into a nice, neat stack of identical lids, which creates a setup which is incredibly compact and satisfying to use. And if you want to go really extreme with this, you can not only get rid of your bowls this way, but even your glasses too by using mason jars, as they follow this exact same principle, except now you can drink iced coffee and leftover spaghetti sauce from the same cup. But in all seriousness, it's not that bad if you just think of it as your bowls and glasses having lids rather than drinking and eating things out of containers. And this principle makes for an incredibly effective way to save on that valuable kitchen cupboard space. Okay, now let's face it, there's just something special about shoes. I mean, people collect them, paint them, even remortgage their houses for them. But regardless of how much you love shoes, the one thing that you don't want them doing is cluttering up the floor of your entryway and potentially leaving you in crutches for a month. Unless you happen to have an entryway closet, the common solution of purchasing a shoe rack actually does very little in the way of stopping this cacophony of colors, sizes, and shapes from making your entryway look like the back of a bad thrift store, which may not be the best first impression that you want to give to both you and your guests when entering into your home. And then when it comes to purchasing standalone cupboards with the added bulk of their door mechanisms and swings, these aren't really ideal either when you're dealing with a space that's sometimes as narrow as a porta potty. And so if you happen to find yourself in this predicament, let me reintroduce you to the mighty fold-out shoe cabinet, which ingeniously hides and stores all of your shoes vertically using these tilt-out doors, which saves a ton of space by significantly reducing the amount of space that a single shoe takes up. Now, these doors almost resemble garbage chutes, which I find to be quite fitting considering how many shoes they can simply gobble up. But what this does is enable it to be probably the narrowest piece of effective storage furniture you can buy. And don't make the mistake of thinking that these little cubbies can only hold shoes, because they also work great for things like magazines, kids' toys, and handbags in other narrow spaces around the home too, meaning that they can turn even the most overlooked of spaces into a black hole of untapped storage potential. And because when mounted on the wall at a certain height, they leave enough space for your shoulders and feet to pass by them, you often barely even notice they're there. And so because of this, I think this makes them one of the best pieces of space-saving storage furniture that you can possibly buy. Have you ever stopped to consider that sometimes there's just so much space going to waste underneath furniture when you're sitting down? And seriously, if your sofa isn't at least letting you use the space underneath it to play hide and seek, what are we doing? And so I think it's a huge problem that so many furniture items like sofas and beds in small homes are designed this way. And so this is why in most cases I generally recommend choosing legged furniture, as this can provide this illusion of space while creating a visual dead zone for storage, where wide and shallow plastic containers can be great in these spaces, as they're affordable, durable, lightweight, and transparent, which means that you can use them nearly anywhere and you can easily identify the last few pieces of junk that you needed to stuff inside them, which makes them perfect for transition bins for all of those items that you know that you really need to throw out, but aren't quite ready to part with yet. And should it ever come to moving or shuffling things around down the line, because they're stackable and waterproof, they can easily store inside of a garage or even outside on a balcony too. Non-stick pans. Now, I get that food sticking when cooking isn't ideal, but the problem with these things is that they're coated, which makes them so delicate. You can't get them too hot or they'll burn, and you can't stack them without them scratching. So you're forced to store them individually, which makes them a massive waste of cupboard space, and it also makes them incredibly high maintenance. And that goes without mentioning any of the potential toxicity that they may expose you to. But with stainless steel, on the other hand, you don't have to worry about any of this, and with their metal handles, you can use them in the oven too, so that they can also function essentially as a baking tray for things like chicken, potato wedges, or even finishing off a steak, which can help you save even more space because of their dual functionality. This is honestly the reason that stainless steel is so widely chosen in commercial restaurants, because it's also lightweight and scratch-proof, which means that you can comfortably stack them or hang them without worrying about coatings or seasonings getting scratched off. And because you can stack stainless steel worry-free, when it comes to things like mixing bowls and colanders too, this material becomes very hard to beat, as in the dishwasher, it just dries off so much faster than plastic without worrying about warping or discoloration, which makes it not only more convenient, but easier on your pocket in the long run too. The guest bed. Now, if your home's feeling short on space and you have a guest bed, you need to ask yourself a couple of questions. Firstly, on average, how many nights a year does this bed get used? And if you had an extra room in your house, what would you do with it? Could you perhaps create an office, a games room, a gym? And if you used those rooms, how many days a year do you think that you would use them? And when you start to think about how many lifestyle changes and possibilities that you may be saying no to just by saying yes to a guest bedroom, it's scary to think about just how much you may be missing out on. It's actually quite crazy how little this furniture item gets used, compared to how much space it steals from your home. And so to get more out of your guest room, the Daybed is arguably one of the best bang for your buck space-saving furniture items out there, because not only does it serve as a sofa when it's folded away, but when it folds out, it's the equivalent width of a king-size bed, while also integrating drawers for storage. And this is why we decided to modify one for use as our main bed in our master bedroom, as we can now use this room as an office, a workout area, or a TV room, while the two separate twin mattresses allow you to tailor each side to your own liking, while being far easier for transportation too when it comes to moving. The toolbox is an absolute essential for most homes, as it's likely that at some point you're going to need to attempt to dismantle, cut, or install something. But for the average person who's never had the pleasure of attempting and failing at a DIY project, the idea of collecting an assortment of tools can be intimidating, frustrating, and time-consuming to both purchase and organize. But there are tools out there, like the Leatherman, that can replace nearly 20 tools that would otherwise take up unnecessary space in a toolbox or even a tool belt for a tradesman. And I find myself reaching for this all the time, for things ranging from opening packages to cutting wires and loosening bolts. This tool does so much reliably and beautifully too, which makes it great for gifting, as I was kindly gifted this one by a good friend back in the UK. And really, this same principle should apply to things like screwdrivers and wrenches using interchangeable bits, which can save on a ton of space compared to owning and storing all of these items independently. And for the space and time-conscious homeowner, tools like this are undoubtedly a win-win. The TV. Now, I promise you I'm not crazy, as I'd never tell you that a TV is a waste of space, as I know that they're a huge source of joy for just so many households. But what is a waste of space is often how we choose to install them. This is because when they're kept on their stands, they're big enough to feel like a part of the wall projecting out into the middle of the room, which can significantly eat into the floor space of a small living area. And then, of course, they need to be placed on top of a furniture item that can stably bear their weight, which potentially wouldn't even have to be in the room if the TV was simply fixed to the wall. Now, this is particularly important in smaller homes because items that are between eye and elbow level tend to feel particularly intrusive to the way that we perceive space, thanks to the locations of our limbs and joints. So as long as you're not limited by your TV's ports, a low-profile wall mount can get your TV as close to the wall as physically possible to limit this effect. And installation for these may be far easier than you think, as if you have drywall partitions in your home, drywall anchors can hold between 25 to 75 pounds each when installed correctly, despite requiring only a screwdriver for installation. And then when it comes to heavier TVs, toggle bolts can hold even more. And so when considering how much space this can potentially free up when pairing it with shallower cabinetry to hide any electronics you may have below, this can be a very effective way to reclaim the space that's lost to TVs on their stands in your home. And of course, if you really want to sell the illusion of space, it's hard to beat doing away with a TV completely by using a projector, which, despite not having the brightest and sharpest picture out there, when paired with a proper screen, these can be placed in front of art, walkways, and even windows, while being almost invisible when they're not in use. Display cabinets. Now, these really are for people with space to kill, which is why we're probably so used to seeing these at our parents' places. And the reason that I say this is, as like shelves, you can't really use them for storage, as everything inside is on display, which, when overcrowded and cluttered, looks particularly bad. And I don't know about you, but for me, when it comes to storage, the ability of being able to be messy on the inside is kind of the whole point. And one of the added drawbacks of display cabinets is because of their doors, they require even more friction to get things in and out of them, with the added fear of their glass shattering from any mistreatment. And so what I find ends up happening with these is that they end up storing old tableware, souvenirs and trinkets that never really get used because they're mostly either a bit useless or a headache to get out, while this whole enormous cabinet looks like an eyesore and generally just gets in the way. And so I'd say you're far better off going with actual cupboards that at least give you the freedom to relax and be a bit messy on the inside, or going for things like sideboards, which don't invade that valuable space between eye and elbow level, which can really help to make your home feel larger. Coffee tables. Now, if you have a spacious home, feel free to completely ignore me on this point, and really mostly all of the points that I've made in this video, because I totally get why they exist. But in a smaller home, having something so big for this singular task of holding something like a coffee cup and a magazine seems pretty wasteful. And so if you must have a centerpiece for your living area like this, it does help if it at least provides some significant storage, like this one, which holds the leaves for our extendable dining table, while also serving as a secondary work or eating area for us to crush snacks at in front of the TV. But better yet, if you can forego a coffee table completely and go with end tables, stools, or ottomans, as these really accomplish the same task while being far less bulky and way more versatile because they're both lighter and easier to move around into different rooms when you need them there. And what I really like about these items when compared to coffee tables is that they can be used for seating too, with some often coming with some additional space-saving features or hidden storage as well. Kitchen gadgets. There are hundreds of them, ranging from waffle irons to air fryers and from teapots to toasters. Really, in my mind, anything qualifies as a gadget if it's designed to do only one task and one task only, usually with the promise of doing it faster or easier than the traditional method. And contrary to what you may believe, toast can be made in a pan and bananas can be cut with a knife. Yeah, seriously, this is a real product that real people buy. And I'm not saying any of this because I have a vendetta against banana sandwiches, but sometimes having an array of gadgets that are used less than once a week can be a very inefficient use of storage space. And so as a general rule, I don't think kitchen gadgets have a place on valuable counter space unless they're used at least once a day. And really, I don't think that most kitchen gadgets are even worth keeping in small homes that are struggling with space unless they're being used at least every couple of weeks or so. And if you are being tempted into buying a certain kitchen gadget, perhaps borrow it from a friend or family member first, like we are with this waffle iron, as this may save you from wasting money on an item that never gets used and only eats up your valuable cabinet space. But finally, thank you so much for watching, and if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to subscribe and maybe check out another one too.